Part 108. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1083. What does it mean when your forehead moves? It means that the dead skin has moved. What does it mean when the dead skin moves? Yulin felt the dead skin on her forehead beating and raised her head high. Mix, who was holding a clay doll to cast the curse, was stunned when he noticed Yulin's strange behavior in the black mist. After surviving in the world of the undead until now, is there anyone so unafraid of death? Meeks quickly increased the curse power output. Boom boom boom. The clay doll vibrated violently in his hands. This wave can win. Oh. In the black mist, Yulin let out a happy moan. Sure enough, the extraordinary level curse is different. Although the quality is not high, the quantity is huge and filling. Yulin felt that the progress bar of curse was rising rapidly. It wasn't long before it was full. Swallowing spiritual fire. Yulin sneered and walked through the black fog to the astonished Mix. Without any time to talk, he snapped his fingers and a jet of black flame fell on Mix's head. The spirit swallowing fire has the power to burn the spirit. Amid the screams, he clutched his head and twisted on the ground. Yulin stepped forward and stabbed him with a knife. Chi! I saw flesh and blood squirming on the opponent's chest, and the wounds were repairing quickly. Yulin felt that his last strike behavior was a little cruel, killing people with no more than a nod, and that he was not crisp enough to make the other party suffer so much. Sorry, it is my fault. He quickly made up a dozen cuts. Finally killed Meeks. Yulin didn't rest and continued to move forward. The city of Babylon was very large. Yulin let go of his transparent perception and enveloped the surrounding area, with a radius of hundreds of miles under his control. At this moment, he is already at the peak of spiritual legend. But covering a 100-mile radius, Yulin could only feel that this was just a small corner of the first level of Babylon. It can be seen how huge the city is. Violent fluctuations were heard from several directions at the same time. Suddenly. In another direction, a shirtless red-haired man with muscles all over his body shining like fine steel, holding a huge sword on his back, suddenly looked in a certain direction. He was seen wearing heavy shackles on both wrists and feet, as if he had just been released from prison. The red-haired man raised his head, stared for a moment, then laughed loudly, and with a click, an afterimage appeared in front of him. Well. Yulin's chest sank and she groaned. The transparent perception that spread to the surroundings retreated like a tide. He is. Yulin choked back a mouthful of fishy sweetness in his throat. His transparent perception just now was actually chopped into pieces by the man's sword. A pure physical attack, can it do this? Yulin was surprised. But that giant sword, which looked like a steel plate, reminded Yulin of someone. Conquering Knight? In Yulin's memory, he was the conquering knight in silver armor, fighting fiercely on the earth with thousands of extraordinary apostles. That knight's pure force was enough to smash everything into pieces. No one can block the conquering knight's sword, except the Marquis of Lu, who is known as Absolute Defense. Call. Yulin was more careful, bypassing several places where fighting was going on in the forest, and came to the giant tower in the center of the 10th floor. In front of the giant tower was an altar with several pillars around it. When Yulin arrived, he happened to see the back of a woman disappearing in the center of the altar. A portal. After Yulin confirmed that the surroundings were safe, she stepped onto the altar. Confirm transmission qualifications. Number of kills, 1. Current level, F1. You can enter F2. Transmitting. Can you advance to the next level just by killing an undead? Yulin thought it was a bit simple at first. But not when you think about it. Only the 100 top undead from the 4 district servers came to the city of Babylon. Although Meeks died so easily and casually just now, it was because he happened to meet the nemesis of the curse. Otherwise, his ability to curse from a distance is quite scary. At this rate of elimination, very few people will be able to reach the top. Whoever makes it to the top will become the Knight of the Apocalypse. After the big waves wash away the sand, the last 4 people left will be able to become the agent of the Master, the Knight. Yuren arrives at the second level of Babylon. And at this moment, in the first level of Babylon, the red-haired man Yilin was afraid of had 4 corpses lying next to him. The 2-meter-long giant sword shook, and the blood stains on the blade shook out. The blood droplets were like cannonballs, plowing down a piece of the forest in front of the red-haired man. Apart from this, the ground near the 4 corpses was clean, leaving no other unnecessary traces. The red-haired man was smiling throughout the entire killing process, as if killing a few undead was just as trivial as crushing ants. At this time, a startled voice sounded from the side. "Elder brother." The speaker has the same hair color as the red-haired man with the giant sword, bright red like fire. What's even weirder is that he is also naked from the upper body, and their facial features are somewhat similar. The difference is that the back of the red-haired man with the giant sword is bare and filled with latissimus dorsi muscles. On the back of the latter, there are 4 square words tattooed on it. These 4 words are very good and represent the beautiful personal wishes of the tattooed person: wealth, strength, righteousness, and wealth. It means wealth, strength, benevolence, and erudition. He was the proud man who fell into the Age of Gods singularity with Yilin and died tragically in the Age of Gods as a matter of course, Joe D. Solomon. Joe D. Solomon has an older brother, Connor D. Solomon. He had been separated from his brother since he was a child. He heard that his brother had been spotted and drafted into the Inca Holy Empire as a special soldier. Over the years, the 2 brothers have never been in contact. After Joe D. Solomon took charge of the Red Hair Society and rose to power, he had never heard of any news about his brother in the Inca Holy Empire. He always thought his brother was dead. It's not surprising that the 4 towers descended, the world was in chaos, and many people died. Unexpectedly, the 2 brothers met again, actually in hell. It dawned on Joe D. Solomon. It turns out that they never met because his brother became an apostle. Before the advent of the era of universal calling, the apostles could not leave their respective district servers, so that one of the 2 brothers was in the Tower of War district server, and the other was in the Tower of Conquest district server, unable to see each other. Until now. As the climax of the resurrection of the dead, the elite undead from the 4 towers came to the same stage. Connor D. Solomon smiled slightly, and he easily inserted the giant sword into the leather sheath behind his back. "So it's you, my stupid brother." Miriam Artoria ex Pendragon also came here. I saw her right hand holding it empty, with the breeze lingering on it, and drops of blood being shaken off by the Wind King barrier. The long sword that had become transparent made a buzzing sound. Myrian ignored the corpse that she had chopped off at the waist not far away, but looked down at the replica in her hand. A hint of disgust flashed in the depths of her clear pupils. "This sword is a replica. This sword is not the glory of their Pendragon family." But, in order to survive, she could only give up the glory of her family and hold on to this false glory. Myrian moved quickly through the forest and came to the giant tower that connected the 10-story Babylon city. Boom! A cross-shaped sword light tore through the sky and slashed towards Myrian. Myrian jumped into the air nimbly. The attacker hiding in the forest rushed into the air like a bolt of lightning. Ding 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 ding. In just a few seconds, the 2 slashed each other more than a dozen times in mid-air, and the sparks where they collided connected like lightning. Nameless anger burned in Miriam's heart, and she was ready to abandon her family's glory again and wield the winning sword. X. It's you. Myrian's pupils shrank, she forcibly stopped the forward swing of her skill, and the transparent long sword shook, swinging the opponent away. The 2 people who landed on the ground looked at each other in confusion in front of the giant tower altar leading to the next level. "Are you dead too?" Myriam looked at Oda Mai and asked in confusion. She was deeply impressed by Oda Mai. Back then, in front of the great engineer tower, under the arrangement of that hateful man, Miriam was forced to fight Oda Mai 100 times. Later, Oda Mai unlocked the attribute lock in front of Miriam, and Miriam suddenly realized that she had been tricked by Yilin and used as a free sparring partner. And she and Mai Oda had never known each other before. The two women recognized each other's swords. Although Mai Oda and Miriam didn't say it, there was a sense of sympathy between them. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. As Miriam thought about it, her lips inadvertently curved in a way that even she didn't notice. Oda Mai's perspective made her confused and unable to understand. What is this woman laughing at? Oda Mai frowned and prepared to take action again. Although Miriam still maintained the posture of holding the sword with both hands, motionless, her eyebrows softened a bit, and there was no longer the fierce killing intent before. Why are you dead too? You also know me, Oda Mai responded, but she quickly shook her head. You have recognized the wrong person. After saying that, Oda Mai stepped forward again and got into a ball with Miriam. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1084. Gu Tianqing has reached the third level of Babylon City. He looked greedily above his head. Overhead is a piece of suspended land. His target is on the 10th floor. Ah, I seem to smell the fragrance of death. Boom. A body fell from a height. It falls not far from Gu Tianqing. The appearance of the corpse was twisted into a ferocious posture, and most of the body was smashed into rotten flesh, with broken bones and internal organs mixed with the rotten flesh. No one knows what happened to him before he died. Gu Tianqing kicked it with her feet to make sure that the opponent was dead, and then she put a tarot card back into the deck with satisfaction. I really miss you, Freya. The name of that tarot card is, the Hanged Man. In front of Yilin. The path to the third level. He was blocked by a group of Babylonian soldiers. Thousands of Babylonian soldiers. They have no heads, and their golden armor is shining brightly. They held spears in their hands, and when they swung them, they cast down bright bolts of thunder and lightning. They can teleport over short distances, and their movement patterns are mysterious and unpredictable. Every headless soldier has at least extraordinary attributes. The most terrifying thing is that they are not afraid of death. Let the world feel pain from now on. Yilin's voice was louder than thunder, and circles of dark ripples, like the power of disaster, spread to the west with Yilin as the center. 100 meters. 500 meters. 1000 meters. 2000 meters. Within a radius of 2 kilometers. All the headless soldiers fell down one after another. Some were twitching in place, some slowed down, some were imprisoned in place, and some were spinning in circles and losing direction. Grasp of annihilation. Yilin is wearing a mask, with flying black hair, like a god spreading disaster and death. In the fire of the explosion, the spiritual body of a headless soldier fell. Some soldiers' armors were in tatters, and some simply turned into ashes and disappeared from the city of Babylon. Yilin entered the third level. Deduction. Second floor. Li Chang'e was like a peerless swordsman, and the shadow of a giant sword appeared out of thin air behind him, slashing it from the sky. In front of him, there was a dark-skinned friend from the outer area from the Tower of Famine with a ferocious face. He doesn't believe it. It's an illusion. Everything is an illusion. The skills this man displayed were all illusions. He doesn't believe it. He wore a grass skirt around his waist and held an ancient war spear in his hand. Passionate singing sounded around him. Listen to the song. Li Chang'e was stunned for a moment, then sneered. Sounding BGM in front of my actor? Are you looking for death? Get off here. The passionate war song ended abruptly. Li Chang'e replaced the enemy's BGM with his BGM. No one knows how to use BGM on the battlefield better than him. The gorgeous ancient sword has mountains and mountains engraved on one side and the sun, moon, and stars on the other side. The void sword shadow fell from the sky, and in the blink of an eye, the black-skinned head was chopped into pieces, and the brain was shattered. Before death. The moment he felt the sharp pain coming from his forehead, a ridiculous thought came to his mind. This is not an illusion. Second floor. A man wearing heavy armor confronted Li Erpang. Li Erpang didn't know how to eat, and he regained his chubby figure. He rubbed his palms together desperately and squinted his eyes open a crack, as if he wanted to use this method to see the person in front of him more clearly. You are no match for me. Stand down. Li Erpang knew this person. To be precise, as long as they are in the Legion of Order and are on the first line in the confrontation with the Apocalypse Knights, all the apostles knew this person during his lifetime. The Supreme Commander of the Legion of Order, Marquis Lu. The man known as Absolute Defense. Boom. With a smile on his face, Marquis Lu lifted a tower shield as high as a person from behind to in front of him, and pressed it hard into the soil at his feet. The shield pressed down, driving a straight ravine into the ground. The shallow ravine looked like an insurmountable ravine in Li Erpang's eyes. Lu's hands have been stained with the blood of countless former comrades, Lu Ho said with a smile, but we have actually died long ago. We should all rest in peace and sleep forever. We should not have to encounter this. Li Erpang, today it is up to me. Marquis Lu, I will send you on your way. I'll give you paralysis. Li Erpang raised his middle finger and replied mercilessly. Lu Ho did not answer. Rays of light lit up on him and his shield. Add defensive skills to yourself one by one. Defensive stance. Ignore the pain. Heroic. Damage rebound. Shield barrier. Group taunt. Titan power. This is Marquis Lu, the Marquis Lu who is known as Absolute Defense. When Lu Ho is a teammate, he can make people feel extremely at ease. But when Lu Ho became an enemy, the brilliance of his defensive skills made Lu Ho seem to be a man in fine steel armor, so hard that it made people feel numb. This is trouble. Li Erpang looked at the altar leading to the next level behind Marquis Lu and curled his lips. The war is about to break out. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. The sound of slashing came from a distance. Li Erpang and Lu Ho noticed the movement and moved a dozen steps to the side in unison. I saw two women, hacking together like crazy. I could only hear the sound but not the shadow. The afterimages intertwined, and the two people fought their way to the two of them. Lu Ho and Li Erpang entered the altar at the same time and disappeared at the same time. Ah, this? Lu Ho and Li Erpang looked at each other. They all felt that the atmosphere of the war that they had finally built up was completely destroyed. Oda Mai and Miriam slashed all the way from the first floor to the third floor. From the third floor, cut all the way to the fifth floor. Their fight has exceeded the level that ordinary elite undead can mix. On the way, countless people were accidentally chopped to death by the leak sword energy and light. Oda Mai seems to be in love with Miriam. She always felt that as long as she killed the opponent in front of her, she could break through the original realm. But what about after the breakthrough? She hadn't thought about it. Miriam panted as she swung Oda Mai away with a single blow of her sword. Listen to me, we are not enemies, and I don't want to be their puppet. Miriam explained it many times. She didn't want to be a knight. She even declined the invitation. She didn't know her purpose of coming here either. Miriam simply wanted to confirm whether he survived in the end. With his strength, if he died, he would definitely be able to thrive in the world of the undead. Therefore, if he is here, he will definitely be here. In this Garden of Babylon, the city in the sky. Miriam wanted to confirm this with her own eyes. If he is still alive, then her sacrifice in the generation of gods was not in vain. The undead walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood to come here, in order to survive and be resurrected. But Miriam is different. She just wanted to confirm a person's life or death with her own eyes. If he dies, he will be here. If he is not dead, he must not be here. It's that simple. She was confused. Even though this woman is not the same person as the one who fought in front of the great engineer tower, they are essentially the same person. Miriam thought to herself, this woman had a very good relationship with Yilin, if she accidentally killed her. At this moment, Yilin was almost unstoppable. The conditions for entering the next level are simple. Killing one person will lead to the third floor. Killing one more person will lead to the fifth floor. Kill again, and the seventh floor is stable. Yilin's abilities are very suitable for melee combat. In the chaos, he easily picked off one person's head among tens of thousands of enemy troops. Yilin felt no pressure and reached the ninth floor after consuming about 1/3 of her spiritual energy. Many terrifying monsters once roamed the ninth floor. These monsters once existed only in myths and legends. Half-man, half-bull monster, Hydra, three-headed dog of hell, and so on. But why say once? Because, these monsters have all turned into corpses at this moment, lying on the ninth floor. Observing their corpses, Yilin discovered that these were almost all done by the same person. It looked like these monsters from myths and legends were crushed to death by heavy objects. Following the corpses of the monsters, Yilin became more and more silent as she walked without saying a word. The corpses of the monsters seemed to pave a road leading to death. At the end of the road, the four people stood near the giant tower leading to the 10th floor, with comfortable postures, waiting for Yilin. Gu Tianqing is playing cards. A red-haired man carrying a huge sword. Next to the red-haired man, Yoshihiro Togashi? No. It's Joe D. Solomon of the Redheads. The last one was a little old man with skinny limbs. His skin was dark all over, his head was bald, his thick lips were stained with blood, and only the whites of his eyes were left. He seemed to be blind, but he seemed not to be completely blind. Although Yilin was still wearing a mask, Gu Tianqing recognized Yilin at a glance. Gu Tianqing smiled and waved to Yilin, "You can indeed reach the 9th floor." Connor D. Solomon scratched his head, "Is it him?" Gu Tianqing shook his head, he shuffled the cards skillfully, and then pulled out one card from the deck. Gu Tianqing looked at the card, his expression unchanged. He showed the card to the others and said with a smile, "Unfortunately, no, he is the fool." Of course, no one understood what Gu Tianqing said. Joe D. Solomon was puzzled. "Brother, who are you waiting for? Haven't we already gathered 4 people? Let's go in quickly. As long as we win, we can be resurrected." The thought of resurrection made all the muscles in his body tremble with uncontrollable excitement. He held his brother's thigh all the way here. What he never expected was that his long-lost brother would be so powerful. Pure power, crushing everything, no one can stop it. A strong body can withstand anything and no one can challenge it. He was once ranked 7th in the Tower of War server, but in front of Connor D. Solomon, he was as weak as a younger brother. There is nothing wrong with just being a younger brother. The redhead thought calmly. The situation is clear. Among the 4 people in front of me, 3 are candidate knights. So. Yilin pointed at the extra red-haired Chiao, "What is this extra thing?" Pook. When Gu Tianqing heard this, he couldn't help but be happy. The redhead was furious and furious. But in a blink of an eye, he felt that the voice sounded familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere. "You're right." Connor D. Solomon laughed and applauded. He gently stretched out his hand and gently pressed his brother's head. "This is the arena for the strong." The next second. Click. The red-haired head was crushed open by his brother's bare hands. It looks like a crushed watermelon when it explodes. In front of Yilin's eyes, there was only a red head. "Sorry, I'm rude." Connor D. Solomon casually wiped the wet brother's blood and white brains on his chest, flicked his fingers, and the two eyeballs stuck to his hands were shot away. Connor smiled heartily, with a bright and pure smile. "Forgot to introduce myself, Connor D. Solomon, the man who will soon become the conquering knight. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1085. After saying that, Connor glanced at Gu Tianqing, who was still shuffling quietly, and then turned his attention to Yi Lin again. "I think you are more suitable to be death than him." "Sorry, friend." The second half of Connor's sentence he said to Gu Tianqing, "I trust my intuition." Gu Tianqing seemed indifferent, with the hypocritical smile still on his face, but his action of shuffling the cards stopped abruptly. He pressed the deck neatly between his palms and said with a smile, "Actually, I think so too. It's a pity that he has too many chips on him, right, my president?" Yi Lin narrowed her eyes. "Thank you." Although Yi Lin's expression was very calm at the moment, he quietly raised Connor's danger level to max. As an enemy, Yi Lin may not be afraid of his strength, nor of his cunning, nor of his fearlessness, but what he is afraid of is his ruthlessness. A person who can even kill his own brother with a smile on his face, what other crazy things can't he do? Have to say, the choice of knight above is indeed unique. Gu Tianqing is a pervert. Connor is ruthless. The thin, black old man looked like he was not a good guy at first glance. Really discerning. "Huh, is it really okay for Top to cheat so blatantly?" Yi Lin asked. "That's why the mythical prop, Babylon, is used here," Gu Tianqing explained with a smile. "Everything that happens here will only produce results for the other gamblers above, and they will not know the process. Of course, for them, as long as the result is enough, the process is not important." Yi Lin was silent. Gu Tianqing sighed softly. "President, I really want to live with you. Really, that decaying world will be more fun with you around. Do you know, I once saw an undead with my own eyes. After exhausting the number of deaths, he came back to life again. He lost all the memories of dying 100 times. He thought he had just stepped into this resurrection game. It felt like being refreshed. Same thing. Human beings are so insignificant that they cannot even taste their own death." Yi Lin nodded. "I agree." He agrees with Gu Tianqing's statement, but cannot empathize. Only one knight will be born in each tower. They are the default candidates. They were chosen long ago, at the moment of their death. Therefore, the moment Gu Tianqing escaped from his death, he attracted the supervisor and personally sent him here. It is to make the birth of the Death Knight a given reality and to make Gu Tianqing's destined death a reality. No matter what Yi Lin does, no matter which step he reaches, in the end, he will still be played by the superior masters and be applauded. Rumble. Rumble. At this time, violent vibrations came from beneath my feet. "It's below." Yi Lin's expression changed. The thin black old man chuckled and said, "It's begun." Gu Tianqing shrugged. "It's a god's bad taste." Connor smiled nonchalantly. "The last one should be able to catch up, right?" Yi Lin felt let go. He felt that the lower level was rapidly collapsing. The 9th floor is collapsing into dust, and the surrounding area has become a mortal void. The undead who were too late to reach the 9th floor were completely killed by this wave of collapse. The cruel stage requires some exciting special effects. Undoubtedly, for them, this can bring some fun to their long and boring lives. Let me have some fun while I still have time. Connor D. Solomon smiled heartily, like a sunny and handsome boy next door. He held a giant sword and walked towards Yi Lin step by step. Facing Connor, Yi Lin had the illusion that she was facing a high mountain, which was hard to shake. Legend. Yulin's heart sank. There is no doubt that the Connor D. Solomon in front of her gives Yulin the feeling of being an out-and-out legend. Moreover, he is standing at the pinnacle, only one step away from reaching the next level, a peak legend. Wow! In the blink of an eye, Connor was dozens of meters away and slowly slashed at Yulin with his sword. When he swings the sword, it feels like he is holding a mountain in his hand and letting it fall easily. Die! Connor said nothing. But among the lightning and flint, the ordinary giant sword seemed to absorb the surrounding light, making the scene on this level dim. The distorted light and shadow formed a word in front of Yulin's eyes. Die. Analytical horizon. Yulin's eyes were covered with light. Without hesitation, he entered the analytical vision state. From the end of the giant sword, trajectory lines extend out, passing through Yulin's head without exception. Deduce, calculate, try. Under analytical vision, Yulin has enough time to analyze the opponent's attack patterns and respond accordingly. No. But soon, Yulin was surprised to find that Connor's sword had no fancy trajectory, nor any skill effect hidden in it. Just a sword. The lead has faded away, and it is an extremely simple sword. This sword even reminded Yulin of Morendi's fist. Not good. He and Morendi are the same kind of people. The kind of person who breaks the limitations of his body with pure force. Tisk, you are the type I hate too. In Yulin's vision, Connor's giant sword suddenly accelerated. At that moment, Yulin's pupils shrank suddenly. When everything around him was flowing at a slow speed, Connor's giant sword suddenly changed to a normal flow speed, making him feel like his sword split time. The illusion. The giant sword passed through Yulin's body, splitting him in half, but Connor frowned, smiled instead of being surprised, and swiped again. The giant sword did not cause any movement, and once again chopped another 100 meters away. Yulin. Call. Yulin exhaled a breath of air, and in a hurry, the auras on his wrists lit up, and free method mirage created countless phantoms, avoiding Connor's two swords. The brief contact left a deep impression on Yulin. Connor D. Solomon is a typical melee type apostle? No, it should be said to be the ultimate melee type. His control over his power has reached an incredible level. With that sword strike just now, when the huge sword shattered Yulin's phantom, the tip of his sword accurately stopped less than 1 centimeter from the ground, and then he quickly swung the second sword. The connection between the two swords was smooth, without any unnecessary movements. Even things like inertia seemed to be eliminated by Connor. His two swords did not bring any damage to the surrounding environment or the ground. The highly concentrated power brought Yulin felt extremely palpitated. Thousands of phantoms jumped repeatedly around the three candidate knights. Every phantom in Yulin's mirage is equal to reality, with heartbeats and breathing, enough to make it look real. After Connor looked around, he quickly landed on a phantom not far away and smiled slightly. Unfortunately, it seems that our compatibility is not very good. Yulin's face darkened. Connor was right. Even though Yulin didn't admit it. But after a brief contact, Yulin understood one thing in the shortest time. This man who carries a huge sword and uses pure close combat ability to reach the peak of the legendary level and will soon become a conquering knight in the future, Connor D. Solomon. It's his natural enemy. Natural nemesis. Not to mention the undead. In the circle of apostles, there has always been a talk of nature. The evolutionary direction of each apostle cannot cover all aspects. Everyone has natural enemies. Just like Yulin himself, all cursed abilities are ineffective against him, and he is the natural enemy of this type of apostle. But at this moment, when facing Connor, Yulin intuitively told him that this person's evolutionary direction was completely opposite to his. This is the smell of natural enemy. The compatibility between the two of them was extremely different. Hopefully we can have a good time. Connor smiled politely, accurately judged Yilin's true identity, and slashed at Yilin with his mediocre New Year sword technique. Cold. A figure approached from far away, as fast as a golden meteor, bright and dazzling. A familiar golden knight sword stung Yilin's eyes and blocked Connor's sword. Miriam arrived in time to protect the cook. Let's listen to the breakdown next time. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1086. The Golden Knight Sword and the Grey Giant Sword couldn't completely touch each other at the moment of collision. There is a distance of several centimeters between the swords. The space inside was distorted, and after a crisp sound, the inside was like a colorful and broken mirror. In the narrow gap, it seems that an infinite universe is hidden. Time seems to stand still. Boom. After being still for a second, the Golden Knight Sword was bounced away by the huge force of the rebound. Myrian took the opportunity to hug Yilin, and Gilialu rolled out more than 10 meters away. During the rolling process, Myrian reflexively used her armor to bear the slight damage caused by the rolling. Because in her impression, the body that cooks is very weak. Connor looked shocked and took a few steps back because of Miriam's sword. Myrian endured the pain in her body and took off Yilin's mask without mercy. It's really you. Miriam's tone was both happy and sad. The reason she was happy was that she could reunite with the cook here. Sad because, being able to meet again here means, he is dead. Myrian took it for granted that at the end of the Age of Gods, she and Yilin used their own power to blast the Holy Grail at the same time. Both of them withstood the backlash of destroying the Holy Grail and died together. If he didn't survive, wouldn't his death have been in vain? Miriam's thin eyebrows knitted together, her face sullen and speechless. You, Het. The moment Yilin saw Miriam and said the word you, she naturally felt relieved again. This is the final undead war where the elites of the 4 districts gather. As the Night King of the Tower of War server, Myrian should appear here. Sorry. Yilin said something. He is apologizing for what happened in the Age of Gods. Myrian climbed up from Yilin expressionlessly, ignoring the dirt on her body, and pointed the night sword in her hand at Connor. She didn't seem to hear Yilin's words. But both Yilin and Miriam were clear-minded. She heard it. But she ignored it. At this time. Boom, boom, boom. Heavy footsteps approached from deep in the forest. Oda-mai chased Myrian and chopped down 9 floors. I don't know why, but Miriam seemed to be very familiar with her, but she has been reluctant to take action seriously. This move actually aroused Oda-mai's strong desire to win, and she had to kill Myrian, so she fought with Myrian. She chased Myrian all the way to the 9th floor of Babylon, and happened to see Myrian getting up from Yilin. Feeling a little uncomfortable for no reason. Oda-mai didn't know why. She tightened her grip on the knife in her hand. Huh. Yilin didn't have time to be happy after seeing each other again after a long absence. He noticed something. Why are you still wearing your silly hair? Yilin asked. The elastic hair on Myrian's forehead slowly curled up, like a question mark, but she did not answer directly. My Oda also arrived at the scene. She tightened her grip on the knife and didn't let go. So, you know her? Oda-mai asked with a sullen face, staring into Yilin's eyes. The smile on Yilin's face froze, but he smiled and spread his hands, calmly changing the topic. I don't think now is the time to talk about this issue. Oh. Connor first looked at Miriam, and then at my Oda. His eyes lit up. Apparently, Myrian and my Oda aroused his interest. Don't get me wrong, Connor D. Solomon is a pure swordsman. His only obsession is the giant sword in his hand. What can arouse his interest is the collision of knives and swords, the flying of blood and flesh, and the wailing of the opponent dying under his sword, nothing more. In Connor's opinion, Oda-mai and Miriam are obviously much more interesting than Yirin. Fighting with the mental side is so boring. Why don't you all come together? Connor's giant sword touched the ground diagonally, and his other hand hooked towards Oda Mai and Miriam respectively. Time is running out, I hope you can stay for me, Connor D. Solomon, before you die. A time that will last a lifetime. Snort. Snort. Oda Mai and Miriam snorted coldly and charged at Connor at the same time. Actually, whether it is Oda Mai or Miriam, both of them have their own pride. If they were alive, they would never bother to join forces to deal with the same person. My Oda has the pride of a swordsman, and Miriam also has the pride of a Night King. Only this long undead career, the cruel battles between life and death, gradually smoothed the edges of their pride. At this moment, they are just undead souls killing each other in order to survive. Myrian and Oda Mai took action at the same time. Boom. The ground seemed to have been bombarded by missiles, with deep ravines plowed out. The ground was shaking, and in the blink of an eye, the melee between the three of them spread from here to hundreds of meters away. It was difficult for others to see clearly the movements of the three people fighting, and they could only see three shadows leaping in the forest. After Connor stopped Yilin, the thin, dark old man and Gu Tianqing, who had been watching with cold eyes, finally made their next move. Gu Tianqing looked at Yilin with a smile, but there was no luster in his eyes. The tall, thin old man smiled slightly, clasped his hands together, and clicked and twisted his neck. I suggest that we don't create unnecessary complications. Before the black and thin old man was about to take action, Gu Tianqing suddenly smiled at the black and thin old man and said, "The instructions given to us by above are to ensure our quota and the result of the bet, nothing more." The skinny black old man's face changed slightly and he fell into deep thought. Gu Tianqing pulled out a tarot card, glanced at it from an angle that only she could see, and said with a smile, "I think you don't want to be resented by the gods. You know, what we are doing now is also it's not a glamorous thing. Call." The thin black old man took a long breath, and his changing expression returned to calm. He laughed twice and stared at Gu Tianqing coldly. "Boy, don't think that I don't know what you are thinking. If you want to show off with your intelligence, it would be too superficial to get more benefits from your sir." Gu Tianqing made an expression of "I'm a little embarrassed after having my little thoughts exposed," and patted the dark and thin old man on the shoulder. "At least, we are not hostile yet, right?" After Gu Tianqing said, blinked. The thin black old man accepted the statement. Gu Tianqing is right. They are candidate knights who know more than the average undead. What makes the black and thin old man despair is that the ending of this seemingly cruel game is doomed from the beginning. From the beginning, the choice of knight has been destined, and no one can change it. He was grateful that he was chosen. Being a substitute sounds a bit frustrating, but if you think about it carefully, there seems to be nothing wrong with it. The gods can destroy the world with a snap of their fingers, not to mention that those who control this vast gambling game are those who are above the gods. The more he knew, the more he felt his own insignificance. In front of the upper power, he was humbler than an ant, struggling for charity. Ignorance is bliss. The undead have hope in their hearts because of their ignorance, but they don't know that what the gods above like most is to see the ants' hopes shattered and they suddenly fall into boundless despair. Just like when some humans tease ants, they don't like to crush them to death. Sometimes they are flooded and sometimes burned. It is quite fun to overlook the ants struggling in front of various difficulties. The thin, dark old man stepped into the altar. A green beam of light engulfed him. In an instant, the dome above the head, the 10th layer of land, became transparent and clear. The hazy shadows are like the excited audience in the Colosseum, or the gentlemen wearing mock masks at the masquerade, ready to move in the vast sky of stars. The moment the tall, thin old man stepped in the starry sky, a green beam of light penetrated him. The green seat, thousands of feet high, is like a mysterious celestial body that towers over all things. The light and shadow on the seat are colorful, and the twisted evil charm is like substance, looming behind the dark and thin old man. However, this does not affect me from adding a little bit of fun to the end of the dance. Before Gu Tianqing stepped into the altar and officially transformed into the Death Knight, he pondered for a moment about the tarot card he had drawn before. Gu Tianqing smiled and shook the tarot card. Dark light struck Yilin. Yilin knew very well that Gu Tianqing had become an enemy. With a flick of his wrist, he activated the shadow blade and turned into a shadow to escape. But the speed of the light turned from the card exceeded the limitations of space, and it teleported towards Yilin. Thinking body. Light as bright as stars gathered into a giant of light behind Yilin. Yilin's true body is hidden in her mind body. The dark light merges into the mind body. Yilin's expression changed. But he didn't notice anything strange. At this time, Gu Tianqing walked towards the altar. The 100-foot-tall Niantai giant punched Gu Tianqing. At the same time that the mind body took action, circles of dark light swayed from Yilin's body. The power of disaster. Let the world feel pain from now on. The force of disaster that was heading towards Gu Tianqing was blocked by the dark light floating on his body. Gu Tianqing turned back indifferently. At this moment, the smile on his face was gone. His eyes were as dark as ink, without the whites of his eyes. It was so weird that after looking back, he would become another creature. No feelings, no emotions, no joy or sorrow. He is like a puppet without a will. It's useless. The sad thing is that no matter how hard you and I try and struggle, the result is already determined before the start. Gu Tianqing smiled. A card is shaken out. The Hanged Man. The scene in front of Yilin's eyes turned upside down. It was not just Yilin who was turned upside down. Connor, Myota, and Miriam, who were fighting fiercely on this land, were suddenly turned upside down in front of their eyes, with their heads in the sky and their feet on the ground, falling downwards. What is reversed is not the view in front of everyone. This is not an illusion either. It's this world that's turned upside down. With the power of Gu Tianqing. Gu Tianqing sighed, "This is not the path you should take, so farewell, my president." After that, he also stepped into the altar. Gu Tianqing's figure appeared in the starry sky. The shadows representing the gods were completely boiling. Do gods also have joys and sorrows? Some. They made a heavy bet in this bet. The moment the results are produced, they have corresponding joys and sorrows due to the results. Under the starry sky, there was thunder, deafening. Red thunder pierced the long night. Pieces of starry sky were shattered, filled with the anger of the gods. The shadow of death completely overwhelmed Gu Tianqing. He became the agent of death. As he said at the end, each tower can only give birth to one night. The moment Gu Tianqing stepped into the altar and became a Death Knight, it meant that Yilin's path to the 10th floor was completely cut off. Yes. What Gu Tianqing is about to usher in may not necessarily be a bright future. Maybe he will lead to a more desperate path. But Yilin cut off the future at the moment when Gu Tianqing officially became a Death Knight. It's so noisy. A blond young man, with ripples like water under his feet, walked from far to near, entering the sight of all the undead. He has slightly curly blonde hair, which looks as if it has been washed and rejoiced, exuding a beautiful luster. His eyes were flawless green, like two rare emeralds. The young man wore a robe with gold trim on the sleeves and a pair of ordinary black framed eyes on the bridge of his nose. He waved friendly to Yilin, "Friends from the east, I'm sorry, I'm late. Can you let me pass by?" He pointed to the altar behind Yilin. "I think you have lost the qualification to compete for the candidate." "Sorry, out of politeness as a scholar, I should introduce myself before talking to you." The young man was polite and made a ceremonial gesture that made Yilin's scalp tingle slightly. He was too familiar with this gesture. The young man's green eyes exuded a gem-like brilliance, appearing and disappearing. My name is Bartholomew Dillon, from the Clock Tower, an ordinary magician, monarch. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1087. Yulin looked at the blond young man in surprise, who was neither humble nor arrogant, but a little polite, and his thoughts paused for a moment. Bartholomew Dillon? One of the monarchs of the Clock Tower. Bartholomew Dillon walked toward the altar calmly. He knows the rules. For each tower, only one agent will be born. The masked man in front of me comes from the Tower of Death. And the representative of the Tower of Death has been born, which means that the man wearing the mask in front of him has lost the qualification to live. He should be desperate, wailing, crying, or angry. In short, he shouldn't stand here and hit the stone with eggs. You are a wise man, my friend. This monarch from the Clock Tower, Bartholomew Dillon, doesn't seem to recognize Yulin. After Bartholomew Dillon appears. Ha ha ha. We're finally here. Boom. In the dense forest. Connor calmly dealt with the siege from Miriam and Myota, and even found time to reply. His voice seemed to have its own loudspeaker, resounding on the 9th floor. Bartholomew Dillon, looking in Connor's direction. He lowered his head and felt for a moment, then smiled and said, "So you are also a substitute?" "Sorry, on the way, I met a few difficult Oriental people, which delayed me for some time. Their tenacious spirit moved me deeply, and I am in awe." Yulin was extremely surprised when she listened to the conversation between Bartholomew Dillon and Connor. Bartholomew Dillon is an alternate, war knight? No. This is impossible. Yulin had seen it with her own eyes. He also received a real blow from the sword. The war knight is obviously Miriam. It's obviously her. But Connor's tone clearly confirmed that Bartholomew Dillon, who appeared last, was the last candidate, the Knight of the Apocalypse. Why? 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 This world has given birth to countless time artifacts, but in the end, all artifacts lead to the same end. To bring this world to the second ending, there is only one way, the only way. The fun part finally begins. The long foreplay is really boring. Don't worry, you will have an opportunity in the near future. If I guess correctly, the one who planned everything behind you will use that only opportunity to break all the illusions. Let everything come into reality. Bartholomew Dillon. Miriam. Oda Dance. Connor D. Solomon. Opportunity. His path is cut off. How can he escape from here? Opportunity. Opportunity. At this moment, Yulin's brain was running at high speed. All the riddles, all the clues, Xioxi's words, Green's words, are like a magic curse that is inadvertently imprinted on Yulin's memory. But at this moment, at this most critical moment, it stirs Yulin's memory repeatedly. Rin's thoughts? The past he experienced was that Miriam, who had become a war knight, chopped him down with a sword. Why? In fact, Miriam's appearance at that time made Yulin feel an indescribable sense of violation. Even if she becomes a war knight, according to their deep friendship, why would she kill him if nothing happens? At that time, Yulin thought that after Miriam became a war knight, she plucked out her hair and turned black. No. No. Wrong. Something is wrong. Myrian will become a war knight. Who made her a knight? Yulin also noticed something. The card that Gu Tianqing put into his body just now did not cause him any discomfort. Yulin knew Gu Tianqing's abilities well. He was good at combining various decks and using various skills according to the conditions of the deck. His ability is more on the curse side. However, Gu Tianqing should know that the curse is ineffective on him and he is immune. Yulin opened the panel. There is an additional buff in the upper right corner of the panel. Gain buff. Demon. This buff effect is better than nothing for Yulin now. No, that insidious and cunning man would not do such a boring thing at such a time. To discuss the former president at the end. Not to. According to Yilin's understanding of him, Gu Tianqing would not do such useless work. Gu Tianqing and Yilin are the same kind of people. This is the ability that Gu Tianqing showed when Yilin and Gu Tianqing worked together to fight against the Devil King in the Caribbean. Gu Tianqing was reminding him in this way. The outcome was determined before it started. Isn't this the way I should go? Everything has a meaning. Including Miriam's appearance. The appearance of Oda Mai. His appearance. The Sword of War Knight Myrian. If the result is determined before the start, then as long as he changes the start, he can change the result. So, since Yilin has seen the result, there must be a beginning that leads to the result that he witnessed with his own eyes. If Miriam was not supposed to become a war knight, then it was up to him to push Miriam to the position of a war knight with his own hands. Following like a shadow. Shadow kill. Yilin twisted and turned into a dark shadow without any nonsense or sound effects. When Bartholomew Dillon calmly passed by him, Yilin circled back again and attacked the candidate knight. There was no martial virtue at this time, and he didn't practice martial arts. Take out your gun. Shadow killed 12 companies. 12 bullets spiraled out of the chamber. In a hurry, Yilin had no time to fire the charged bullets and could only use the shadow breaking blow effect of shadow kill to enhance the lethality. Now the goal is clear. Now, the only ones who can stand here and belong to the Tower of War server are Miriam and Bartholomew Dillon. The War Knight must be born. As long as Bartholomew Dillon dies, even if the above is unwilling and Miriam is unwilling, she will become a War Knight. Bartholomew Dillon paused, and the magician's robe on his body swayed in circles of magic circuits. The light of the magic circuit acted like a shield, blocking Yilin's attack. It's a magic gift. Magic attire is a magician's equipment and has a certain defensive effect. Yilin raised her hands, and auras of light appeared on both wrists. A blazing white fireball, like a meteorite, whizzed down towards Bartholomew Dillon. Bartholomew Dillon finally made a move. He frowned and felt the terrible temperature coming from behind. Even the magic ritual could not withstand this move. He chanted obscure magic spells quickly in his mouth and pointed at the huge fireball shattered into pieces and exploded into fireworks all over the sky. The other side. Connor, who was happily fighting with Oda Mai and Miriam, felt something was wrong. Connor was stunned for a moment, then laughed loudly. Interesting. The giant sword, sweep out. An ordinary sword, but it contained terrifying power. Oda Mai had no time to dodge in mid-air, and the sword struck her in the middle. In a hurry, she could only hold the sword with both hands and forcefully put it on her waist, intending to take the sword head-on. Puff. Boom. Click. The clothes behind Oda Mai suddenly shattered into blood-stained pieces. Pillars of blood exploded behind her, and her skin and flesh split open, revealing her bloody spine and ribs. Behind Oda Mai, an invisible shockwave was pushed horizontally like a tsunami, destroying all the buildings and dense forests along the road. After forcibly blocking the sword, both of Mai Oda's swords were broken in the middle. She fell from the air like a falling kite, with blood spurting from her mouth and her face pale. Behind her, the residual power of Connor's sword, after breaking two of Mai Oda's swords and penetrating Oda Mai's body, was blocked by many obstacles, leaving dozens of swords behind Oda Mai. A terrifying chasm spanning thousands of meters. The gap is too big. The terrifying gap behind Oda Mai seems to mean that the strength gap between her and Connor is insurmountable. Connor's sword made Oda Mai truly understand the gap between the two sides. Not only the difference in physical attributes, but also the understanding of power between the two sides is too big. This sword destroyed all Oda Mai's self-confidence and made her ashen face covered with a layer of color called despair. Oda Mai. Myrian watched Oda Mai fall. She was furious. While she was angry, there was also a feeling of powerlessness deep in Myrian's heart that she was unwilling to admit. In fact, during the fight, she became aware of this terrible fact. This man is almost invincible. An indestructible body, an invincible sword, perfected sword skills, and invincible strength. Invincible. This was the first time that Miriam, whether in life or after death, had such cowardly thoughts when facing an existence who was also an apostle. Connor D. Solomon is a terrifying figure who has reached the peak of swordsmanship. Miriam had experienced this feeling of despair in the Age of Gods. No. Miriam roared, she clenched her silver teeth hard, and blood squeezed out from between her teeth. The next second, the false glory in her hand bloomed with a bright golden light. At this moment, Miriam seemed not to be holding a sword, but a piece of light. She was like the incarnation of light, and she seemed to be the center of a storm. The winds around her swept away with Miriam as the center. Excalibur. This is her strongest sword. It is also the sword that will bring her victory, a sure victory. Good. Connor laughed, facing the light coming from the front like a laser cannon. He did not dodge and raised his giant sword as always. As soon as he said the word good, the giant sword was as flexible as a tongue, and it completed the process of charging power, raising, aiming and falling in an instant, all in one go. Fast as lightning. The golden light separated from the middle, and the terrifying force tore the ground on both sides of Connor out of the abyss that penetrated the 9th floor. In the sword-shaped abyss, the light, shadow, and sound of the collapse of the lower level reached everyone's ears more clearly. But now, no one pays attention to the movements below the 9th floor. The 9th floor. The sword light of the curry stick that was split into two shot into the void, eventually turning into specks of light and dust, falling in a sea, and finally disappeared without a trace. Call. Connor let out a long breath. There were burnt marks on the surface of his naked body, and white smoke was rising. His body was red and congested, and he seemed to be unable to feel the burning pain. He held the giant sword and happily walked towards Miriam. Very good, I had a great time. This sword was blocked. Miriam looked at Connor, who was walking slowly in shock, and knelt on the ground in despair. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1088. Miriam did not think deeply about the logic of her actions before taking action. Connor is strong. She sensed it intuitively. So she gave up her dignity as a knight and chose to stop Connor with Myota. But why? Miriam knelt on the ground. A revolving lantern floated before my eyes. Seafood barbecue. Chicken drumstick rice. Kebab skewers. Boiled fish. Boiled eggs. Various recipes that she had eaten before appeared in front of Miriam's eyes. Good smell. Then Miriam understood. It turned out that she simply wanted to clear a way for the cooks. A road to resurrection. Even if she doesn't know how to resurrect. I don't know what it means to get out of here. But, she did it anyway. However, in the end, Miriam failed. Not only did she lose her glory and dignity, but also, her victory. The moment her winning sword was blocked by Connor, Miriam knew very well that she had lost everything. The chance is only for a moment. Yulin knew this very well. When he knew that the candidate war knight originally selected by the above bosses was not Miriam, Yulin understood one of the reasons for his appearance here. Yes, one of them. Maybe there are other reasons. But Yulin knew very well that he had to do this at this moment and here. Everything, for the ultimate victory. No matter what, he had to do it. Bartholomew Dillon's green pupils bloomed with bright green light. It's the magic eye? Yulin had studied in the clock tower for a period of time and was very familiar with the magician's system. So when Bartholomew Dillon opened his magic eyes, Yulin understood Bartholomew Dillon's next plan. Come in you. With a stern face, Yulin clapped his palms, and the evil thought space instantly distorted the scene in front of him. As soon as Bartholomew Dillon turned green, he was sucked into the evil thought space without any warning. Mind-body teleportation. After temporarily trapping Bartholomew Dillon, Yulin acted without any hesitation and took action one after another. The giant of light stood tall on the ground, his huge palm passing through the aperture. Behind Myrian, a huge circle of light appeared out of thin air, holding Myrian tightly from behind. Hey! The sudden restraint shocked Myrian, but she was so uneasy at the moment that she was quietly waiting for death, so that at this moment she was like a delicate little woman who was suddenly caught by Yulin's big hand of mind-body. Making a whew sound. Oh! Connor looked at the circle of light that suddenly appeared behind Myrian with interest, raised his giant sword, and prepared to smash it with one strike. And right now, Oda Mai, who was covered in blood, stood up at some point. She lowered her head, and her blood-stained hair was covered with a shadow of death, making it difficult to see her face. At this moment, she was not breathing, like a dead person. But the dead man in Connor's eyes was standing in front of Connor, holding a half-cut knife in each hand. Miriam floated around. Oda Mai also drifted. At this moment, she couldn't hear any sound. It's like my five senses have been deprived. She couldn't see, hear, or even feel the knife in her hand. But she knew she was holding the knife. Even if both knives are broken, they are still her knives. In the cruel hell, the knife became the only tool she could rely on, even if it was just a replica. She forgot to breathe. In the extreme silence, she seemed to hear the breathing of the other person. It was a kind of breathing that was as cold as steel and rhythmic. It was the breath of iron coming from Connor's giant sword. Oda Mai lowered her head. When she was about to die, various strange fragments appeared before her eyes. In the dark room in Gawu Mountain, the man's eyes were shining brightly. Master Miyamoto Genichi once said, when her sword is swung out, it reaches a point that even the wielder cannot imagine, and that is the fastest sword. In a dark campus, surrounded by tentacled monsters, she and a man rode a motorcycle and fought their way out of the siege. In the dark world, in the face of despair, she smiled and swung a knife, the fastest knife. In the endless abyss, when she was penetrated by tentacles and died completely, the man entered the abyss regardless of everything, held her hand, and said to her, "Let's go back." Various images, in a flash of lightning, floated before Oda Mai's eyes, and finally settled in front of a smiling face that both belongs to her and yet does not belong to her. That picture felt strange to Oda Mai, but deep in her heart she had a ridiculous idea: it would be great if I were her. She knew that none of these experiences belonged to her. Belongs to the other Oda Mai. I just don't know why, before she was about to die, she and another Oda Mai seemed to have reached some kind of resonance. She understood the other person's experience empathetically, and in less than a second, she came from the future. Oda Mai has experienced the other person's life. Call. Oda Mai, who had forgotten to breathe, regained her breath. The moment she was breathing, Connor looked at the dying girl in front of him but still stood tenaciously in front of him. An ecstatic smile appeared on Connor's face. Yes, Connor was happy. He knew what Yulin wanted to do, but now Oda Mai was standing in front of him, which aroused his strong interest. I will kill her with my own hands and give her the highest honor as a warrior, to die with my full sword. Connor dropped his smile. Connor recognized Mai Oda. She is an admirable warrior. So, as a soldier, you should die with your head held high. So Connor let Yulin do things, let Yulin open the portal and take Myrian away. What does this have to do with him? Even if the higher people came down in person, they could not stop him from killing the dying soldier in front of him with his own hands. He held the giant sword high, his muscles tense and motionless, like a sculpture. Oda Mai slowly turned back and looked up at the sky with great effort. There is a light. That light formed the giant. Among the giants, there is Yilin. Among the mental giants, Yilin took Myrian out of the battlefield. When he looked down, he was looking into the eyes of Mai Oda. Yilin is not familiar with this Oda Mai. Really unfamiliar. But I don't know why, at this moment, this Oda Mai actually gave Yilin a sense of tacit understanding, just like before, even without any communication, she could understand what the other person was thinking. Oda Mai understood Yilin's thoughts. Yilin also understood what Oda Mai was thinking at the moment. Oda Mai, I see. Yilin, thank you. Oda Wu's two swords have been broken. She calmly discarded one of the broken knives. The scabbard is gone. She held the sharp blade with her left hand and used it as a sheath. The blood, which turned into light red due to excessive blood loss, flowed down the tiger's mouth, dripping along the edge of the broken knife and landed at her feet, without her even realizing it. You have earned my respect, woman. Say your name and I will give you a dignified death. Oda Mai lowered her head. When she looked up again, she smiled. She smiled happily and gently. This smile made this desperate hell suddenly prosperous like spring. Oda Mai. Mai Oda slowly walked toward Connor. The strange memory made her understand one thing before she died. The fastest knife is not the knife with no worries. Rather, there is a knife in my heart. Having concerns in her heart will not affect the speed of her sword, it will only make her faster. I really envy you, another me. One sword flows the secret, one sword is gentle. Boom, boom, boom. Evil thought space without the assistance of Gaiagiamimi, it can only function as a cage. Yuren temporarily trapped Bartholomew Dillon inside. The dead skin on his forehead cracked like glass with spiderweb-like cracks, and dark blood flowed down Yulin's forehead, making him look hideous and like an evil ghost. Bartholomew Dillon is indeed a candidate knight. He threw magic spells like crazy in the evil space, and it didn't take long for him to break out of the trap. But Yulin's goal has been achieved. Under Myrian's astonished gaze, Yilin roughly pushed Myrian, who was unable to react, into the altar. Boom! A light curtain bounced Yilin away, and it was densely covered with the words "No pass." He was rejected. As Gu Tianqing said, a tower will only give birth to one agent. Gu Tianqing has become a knight of the Lord of Death, so Yilin can't enter the 10th level no matter how hard she tries. His road ends here. But Miriam's path was not cut off. Bartholomew Dillon is an alternate knight. The reason why a substitute is a candidate means that he has not yet completely become a true knight. Perhaps they who are aloof from above never thought that even in the world of the dead who kill each other, there will be people who will bloom the dawn of humanity in hell and personally send others to the passage of resurrection and afterlife. No Rin. Myrian was pushed into the altar by Yilin. She felt the call of some kind of power. Her body is decomposing, and the decomposed body is being reorganized in the endless starry sky. Miriam burst into tears and slapped the light curtain hard. Yilin smiled, "Never forget your pride, King of Knights. Also, forgive my selfishness and let you live in this way, Miriam. I hate you." Myrian roared and appeared high in the sky. Behind her, a murderous blood-red throne of dominance covered the starry sky. On the scarlet seat, red eyes were opened one by one. Each eyeball was of different sizes, and they were spinning rapidly in all directions. The hazy god shadow is boiling again. Another agent decides the result. There are gods who are happy and there are gods who are sad. It was different from the reaction of other knights returning home. The light did not fall on Myrian for a long time. But finally, the red light fell. On the red seat that represents the Lord of War, there are gaps in the pattern that look like patterns, and strange eyes are opened. Countless pupils of varying sizes rotate in all directions, as if there is an independent will behind each eyeball. Myrian was enveloped in red light. Pieces of red and black armor flew from the void and covered Myrian's body. The dark visor covered Miriam's eyes. So far, War Knight was born. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1089. Rumble. Boom boom boom. Pieces of land, starting from the outer edge of the ninth layer, collapsed into the void. Mythical level props cannot be destroyed due to this. It was only the battlefield that collapsed. Pillars of dark light poured out from the collapsed cracks. The battlefield where the outcome of the battle was decided seemed to have lost its meaning for the gods. They are cleaning everything the way they like. Clean and crisp. For a moment. Maybe a second. Maybe half a second. Maybe a shorter period of time. Connor's sword fell. A moment later, Oda Mai appeared behind Connor. Her broken knife was stuck in the tiger's mouth of her left hand, as if it had never been pulled out. She raised her head, her withered hair clinging to her forehead. After she took a long breath, she never breathed it back again and ended abruptly. Good. After a moment of silence, Connor turned around and put the giant sword into the holster behind his back. I'm very happy. Puff. As soon as he finished speaking, the invincible physique that he was so proud of opened a ferocious gash in his chest without any warning. This gash extended from his left shoulder to his lower right abdomen. There were cracks in the pale ribs. Even deep in the ribs, a living heart could be faintly seen, beating vigorously. Blood flowed out and stained Connor's pants. Oda Mai's knife almost cut through Connor's heart. Boom. Oda Mai fell to the ground. Her pupils gradually dilated. In her abdomen, her internal organs slid out along the horrific bloody hole. Connor's sword destroyed her internal organs and took her life. Oda Mai closed her eyes, and the gentle smile on her face completely solidified, frozen here. At this moment, she was as quiet as a sleeping beauty. Ah! No! Don't go! No! Red light spots were escaping from Bartholomew Dillon's body. In the process of escaping, the dots of glow quickly completed the process of bright to dark and dissipated invisible. The moment Miriam officially became a war knight, Bartholomew Dillon also lost his qualification as a candidate. Bartholomew Dillon no longer had the calmness he had just before. He stretched out his hands desperately to catch the light spots overflowing from the surface of his body, as if he wanted to catch the light spots back into his body. After a while, he looked crazy and rushed to the altar. Boom! He was thrown 10 meters away by the light curtain raised by the altar, with blood flowing from the corners of his mouth, looking like a madman. Yilin breathed a long sigh of relief. But the next moment, he felt worried again. Where to go next? He had already felt the collapse of the ground in the distance. This place is about to collapse. All undead will be purged. Human beings are so insignificant. In the eyes of gods, they are not even as good as dust. If they say obliterate, they will obliterate them. When the dust is being swept away, it will be brushed with a broom a few times, but the undead does not have the time to flop and struggle like this. Connor D. Solomon, bleeding from his chest, walked calmly past Yilin. His eyes first fell on Yilin, and then on the crazy-looking Bartholomew Dillon not far away. Then he shook his head and said in a pitiful tone, "Those who cannot accept failure candidly, not worthy of being called a knight." Yilin looked at Connor but didn't make a move. He knew there was no point. "You are very good." Connor D. Solomon walked past Yilin and stepped into the altar. "I don't hate what you do, and I can't fight with you on a bigger stage. Connor D. Solomon, I'm so sorry." What he meant was that Yilin was destined to die here. No one can break the rules. He will live as a winner, while Yilin, as a loser, is destined to die completely with the collapse of the battlefield. He didn't bother to do it, besides, he was already enjoying himself. Of course, it's not that he underestimates Yulin. Although Connor D. Solomon is very obsessed with swords, he is not stupid. This place is about to collapse. If he is dragged here by Yulin and unable to enter the altar, even he will die here. That woman will be a good opponent. Connor waved to Yulin at the altar. His simple and unpretentious movements revealed a desperate meaning, farewell. Connor D. Solomon, disappearing into the altar. Within the starry sky. The fourth agent returns to his position. The throne made of countless weapons exuded the smell of steel and blood. Silver armor was draped on Connor, and he endured it all calmly. Pieces of weapons formed the armor on his body. When the silver light formed the helmet, the armor completely covered Connor's face, leaving only a cold shadow. It's over. All the gods, the four thrones, and the figures of the four knights disappeared from the starry sky. The shadows representing gods disappeared in the blink of an eye, like the audience hiding from the curtain. The starry sky extinguished, leaving only an empty darkness. Boom! Yulin's feet cracked, and black liquid surged from the cracks, gradually turning into a sea and swallowing everything here. Yulin understood that when the four knights were born, the world of the dead had completed its mission as a gambling table and was about to be wiped out by the four masters who controlled everything. What do you do after cheating? Of course, it's to destroy the corpse and destroy the evidence. This is natural. If it were Yulin, Yulin would do the same thing. So, what kind of opportunity is this? Yulin floated up and looked at the collapsing world. This scene was familiar to him, so he took his time and looked for a way out. No. As long as green doesn't trick him, the opportunity will definitely appear here. Hell has been abandoned. If Yulin guessed correctly, this place has escaped the sight of the gods. There won't be any further sightings, so focus here. Yulin calmly stretched out his hand, and the halo of freedom surged between his wrists. He tried to open the portal to see if he could escape in this way. But the reality is cruel. Yulin cannot understand the coordinates of outside the world, so naturally she cannot escape from this hell. Ah. Suddenly. Desperate Bartholomew Dillon frantically scratched his handsome face with both hands. On his face, the sharp nails left horrific wounds, the skin was torn open, and the yellow fat layer under the face was clearly visible. Bartholomew Dillon's magic eye glowed with a strange green light, and his body began to swell and twist. Pale and twisted limbs stretched out from the broken body surface, wrapping him up. Yulin's expression changed and she looked at Barth Marrow, who was gradually becoming perverted. No accident, Barth Marrow will become Yulin's last enemy. Due to Yulin's intervention, Barth Marrow Dillon lost his last chance to become a war knight. In the collapsing hell, Barth Marrow, Logo has only two choices, either accept death calmly or take revenge wildly. Obviously, Barth Marrow broke down and chose the latter. Die. Barth Marrow twisted into a sphere made entirely of stumps, he became a ball. One after another, Bartimarow's faces were opened from the twisted flesh. Yulin's heart skipped a beat. Before he could understand the power of his magic eyes, in the blink of an eye, the pair of magic eyes turned into N pairs. This was a bit bad. Yulin took out both guns and hurriedly charged up. No, it's too late. Snapped. Yulin slapped her palms in front of her body, put her two palms together, and combined her two spears into one. Another swipe. Moon Destroyer Cannon. The two revolvers turned into red and white light, and a 2-meter-long cannon was shaped into Yulin's hands. But just when he was about to pull the trigger, Yulin's movements suddenly paused. This strange pause made Yulin frown, with surprise in his eyes. Ha 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 ha. Die. Countless magic eyes lit up with green light, and then, white light rose on the flesh orb. Strange balls appeared in the dark void. Each ball floated in the sky and began to move axially according to certain rules and orbits. Astral magic. Countless turrets seemed to appear in the void and began to bombard the collapsed 9th floor. The blazing white light drowned everything. Yulin ate right away, and his tattered body was in pieces, but the blood in his body began to repair Yulin's damage, and the wriggling flesh and blood rebuilt his body. Physical energy was lost violently in an instant, and a strong sense of fatigue came over. Yulin looked at the Barcelona ball in surprise. What was that weird feeling that happened when you were stared at by the demonic eye just now? Not only that, Yulin clearly wanted to escape just now, but her body didn't obey her orders. Being controlled? No, it's not that simple. The intertwined reasons were like a spider web, showing reality in front of Yulin's eyes. It took Yulin 3 seconds to understand the current situation. The true identity of Bartimero's magic eye and his astral magic. I see. Under the fierce astral artillery bombardment, Yulin withstood the continuous artillery fire. With his remaining left hand, he grabbed 5 blood balls that only he could see from his eyes and slapped them into his chest. It's not me that's wrong, it's the world. The blood-colored light pillar soared into the sky, lighting up the darkness, bringing the last ominous light to this broken world of the undead. According to the normal rhythm, once this skill is released, it will crush and push the opponent away, leaving no trace of cloud behind. But this time, it's a little different. Sizzling. 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 Yulin felt like her head had been hammered. He was confused. When you open your eyes again, he found himself in a somewhat familiar place. A spacious room with light on all sides. The bright LED lights make this airtight room as bright as day. Where is this place? Isn't he in hell? Isn't he preparing to counterattack and kill Bartolomeo? His skills are almost perfected. Preparing to strike hard. Yulin lowered his head. He was holding a notebook in his hand. On the notebook, there was a line written, round. In front of him, a man with sunken eyes, who looked like he hadn't slept in more than 10 years, or who hadn't taken a shower in several years, and whose hair was as unique as a bird's nest, was holding a stick and staring at him with a silly smile. Pangenji? Yulin tilted her neck, and countless little question marks popped up on her forehead. As for how to distinguish the two personalities of Pangenji and Pan Xiaozheng at a glance. Very simple. The person who likes to rub sticks and pretend to be serious is Pan Xiaozheng. Pangenji is the one who likes to swing sticks and giggle. Pangenji. Are you finally dead? The moment she saw this face, Yulin's brain froze for a moment. After living in hell for a long time, there is a sequelae. Whenever you see a moving person, you will subconsciously think that he is a dead person. When greeting people, they always say yeah. You're dead too, yeah, die together, let's die together, and so on. Pangenji held up Harley Quinn's best friend and waved to Yulin. Hey, welcome back, boy. See chapter 173 Mediocre Fist for details. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1090. Yulin quickly dug out the memories that he had almost forgotten in the corner. This is Mo Ren's training room. In the capital. In Molly's lab. This is, the past. Has he gone back in time? No. Yulin suddenly realized that this was, something that happened back then. Back then, he used Pangenji's head for experiments, for treatment, trying to develop the stimulation ability of thinking acupuncture in advance. After confirming that Pangenji's treatment was effective, Yulin tried to put a needle in her head. Of course, this ability has now been eliminated. But Yulin still doesn't know what happened during the period when he was lost. Turn out to be. During the short period of time when he stimulated his brain and lost his memory, he encountered an undead invasion. He was possessed by his own undead. Why? What year and month is it now? Yulin quickly shook Pangenji's stick and asked. Hey hey hey. As soon as she asked this question, Yilin regretted it. If Pan Zhenji could answer questions normally, he would no longer be Pan Zhenji. Pan Zhenji smiled breathlessly. He let Yilin pull off the stick, then raised his palms up and began to count down. 10. 9. 8. Grass. Pan Zhenji means, you still have 10 seconds. What can you do in 10 seconds? Wrong. This is the past that has happened, so Yilin should recall what he left behind here, at this moment, in front of Pan Zhenji. Square and round? By the way, he left square and circle in his notebook afterwards. Later, Pan Xiaozheng told him clearly that he wrote it himself. Square and round? Fang Yuan is just a symbol and has no meaning in itself. The point is, what is the deep meaning contained in square circle? Pan Zhenji is still counting down. 5. 4. Yilin's palms broke into cold sweat. 3. Pan Zhenji counted down to 3. Suddenly, Pan Zhenji raised his head, paused for a moment, and his expression changed. Ja. A strange smile appeared on Pan Zhenji's face. Like a clown in a circus, the corners of his split mouth are exaggerated and ferocious. It's coordinates, young man. Coordinate. It's the coordinates. He left coordinates here. The coordinates of hell. Pan Zhenji. You are really the eternal God. Yilin was so happy that she wanted to hit Pan Zhenji on the head with a stick. In her hurry, Yilin didn't notice that the smile on Pan Zhenji's face was unusual. Time is limited. The last 2 seconds. Yilin's eyes narrowed, his wrists glowed with the halo of the free method, and he pressed lightly on the paper. Countless halos composed of 1s and 0s, centered on Yilin's position, rotated around and filled the entire room. After a moment, the halo suddenly condensed on the narrow paper. The seemingly simple square and circle contain profound and obscure codes. This is, the coordinates of hell. On the blank paper, 2 figures, square and circle, appeared, and Yilin's vision of the past was completely frozen. The password is correct. A voice sounded behind Yilin. Yilin lowered his head and lost consciousness. A hand came from behind Yilin and gently pressed on the white paper with coordinates printed on it. Pan Zhenji. Hey. Goodbye, boy. Ah, you are gone. Sizzling. 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 Yilin opened her eyes again. He returned to hell. The 10 seconds of traveling through the past were like an illusion to Yilin. On the collapsed 9th floor, in the cracks, there were twisted limbs and ferocious faces, boiling in dark rotten water. They struggled and scrambled to climb out of the abyss, eager to see the light again. Yilin recognized all the faces. There is the Lord Lu with a broken armor and a ferocious face. There was Su Jingjing who broke his long bow. There is Li Chang'e who is no longer handsome. They died and turned into ghosts, cursing everything in front of them. It's time to finish. Orange fire splashed in the sky, and a huge circle was forming. Someone has interpreted the coordinates he left behind and is invading this space. Time is limited. The infinite throne appears behind Yilin. Seeing the throne behind Yilin, uncontrollable desire appeared on every face of Bartomelo Ball. He is a magician. The desire for truth is a magician's instinct. The moment the infinite throne appeared behind Yilin, Barthmero clearly felt a strong impulse in the fluctuations of the throne, an impulse to snatch the throne. I don't deny the compatibility that the muscular man said. Yilin stepped forward step by step, his figure shrouded in scarlet blood. The path he walked along trailed a long streak of blood, making his walking posture look like a blood-stained meteor. Countless green magic eyes emitted laser-like light. At this moment, Barthmero looked like a rotating ball of light in a ballroom, which was particularly cool. Green rays of light fell on Yilin, but to Bartholomew's surprise, the scene of depriving the future that he expected did not appear. Yulin's existence was like a pure black hole, absorbing all the light. Almost exhausted. Rumble, rumble. Add a little bit of annihilation. Yulin's fist was covered with a light layer of gray. It looked like this move was ordinary and no big deal. But it was this mediocre punch that made Bartimero's whole ball tremble, and he kept retreating while trembling. Without the aura of Candidate Knight, you are just a clock tower monarch magician, and unfortunately you are. Yulin's fist penetrated the demon eye. In an instant, the huge flesh ball first expanded, and then shrank violently. In Yulin's fist, it shrank into an extremely small dot, and finally disappeared, not even a little bit. No dust was left. I once studied in the clock tower for a while. This punch is called zero. With the added annihilation effect, the reason can be completely cut off, zero. The core skill of a magician lies in hiding. Once the magician's technique is cracked and loses its mysterious essence, the magician will be worthless. Connor is right, there is a compatibility between people. Yulin and Connor have extremely bad compatibility. Connor has high skills, strong defense, and strong will. His pure melee style gives Yulin a headache. On the contrary, the mystery of the magician becomes useless in front of Yulin, who can interpret the reason. Yes, if Bartholomew Dillon still has the bonus of alternate night, it will also make Yulin feel uncomfortable. But when Miriam officially became a war knight, the aura of Candidate Knight on Bartholomew was recovered, and he was just an ordinary monarch-level magician, nothing more. Bartimero's magic eye is at least a gold-level magic eye or above. He can unreasonably deprive Yurin of the future in a few seconds, but to put it bluntly, the future is guided by the decision of the next second. Bartimero's magic eye can instantly erase Yurin's decision of the next second. The idea of one step was why Yulin stood there dumbly and was beaten. But after interpreting the function of the magic eye, it will not be difficult for Yulin to deal with it. Yulin doesn't need to worry about what to do in a few seconds, just one punch. After a few seconds, a few minutes later, even the future that Bartholomew can interpret is only one move, so this few seconds will not be enough. There's no way to pick it up. Severe pain struck from the center of his eyebrows. 0 and 1 were the same moves. They were both moves that moved forward in an indomitable way. If the opponent could not be killed, he would be killed by the opponent. Even though Yulin easily killed Bartholomew Dillon, he was indeed qualified to become a war knight. He came from another timeline and abandoned the dignity of a magician to become an apostle. In the undead mission, he stood out and became a legendary existence. Fortunately, he is a magician. Yulin was not good at dealing with the ultimate melee apostles from the beginning. Whether it was Miriam or Connor, once they got close, even Yulin would risk being hacked to death by them. As for why he was able to sneak around Myota for 2 hours on the desert map like walking a dog, the reason was simple. From beginning to end, Myota never had any real intention to kill him. Xiao Wu. Yulin endured the discomfort of running out of spiritual energy. This time, the exhaustion of spiritual energy would not make him unconscious again. He came to the body of Oda Mai with heavy steps. Yulin held tightly the bloodless and cold palm, repeating the same sentence over and over again. Sorry. 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 You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1091. The ground beneath Yulin's feet had almost collapsed. He became the only survivor in this collapsed world of the dead. But Yulin survived not because of victory, but because of escape. Yulin held Oda Mai's hand and said goodbye silently. Regardless of whether this Myota was the Myota he knew, in the end, Myota blocked the candidate conquering Knight Connor for him. This favor may not be repaid in a lifetime. Psychic values are recovering quickly. After recovering to a certain extent, Yilin floated up and looked at the completed exit in the sky. There was his only hope of leaving here. Yilin prepares to leave. Oda Mai, who was supposed to be dead, suddenly clenched her cold palms. Yilin lowered his head in surprise and looked at Oda Mai, who was cheating the corpse. Oda Mai smiled slightly. So, you are here. After saying that, Oda Wu suddenly lowered his head, let go of Yilin's hand, and made no sound. Yilin's eyes were sore and she didn't know what to say. This is not the end. It's neither the end of him nor the end of my Oda. The souls of the soldiers deserve to rest in peace, they should not be treated like this. The roaring undead instantly boiled when they saw the exit. As Yilin flew towards the exit, countless undead souls climbed on each other, stacking their undead bodies into a tall tower of flesh and blood, scrambling to crawl towards the only way out. Looking down at this moment, countless undead souls are devouring each other and fighting, the ugly flesh and blood are squeezing each other, and the blood is rubbing against the bones. The stunning scenery of hell is like a vast and boundless meat grinder. The ferocious face, putrid smell, twisted limbs, and broken body, their silent unwillingness, formed a tragic elegy at the end of the collapse of the world of the dead. I will bring you, true victory. Yilin gritted her teeth, turned around and rushed towards the exit, no longer lingering. Regardless of whether they are former friends or not, the undead in hell are just artifacts and are destined to be unable to move towards the reality. Yilin is now at the end of her strength. Countless claws covered in blood grabbed Yilin's feet. I want to live. You can't live alone. Why are you the only one who can go out? That's not fair. I don't accept it. Why are you the only one? Why? The roars and wailings of the undead were roaring and crying behind Yilin. The world is left with only boundless darkness. They are longing for light. Behind that exit, there is, the light of hope. Their anger, their lamentation, and their resentment seem to have turned into reality at this moment, making Yilin feel frightened. Under Yilin's body, there are hundreds of thousands, even millions, of undead. They are all apostles who died for various reasons in every time artifact. They were unwilling to accept that only Yilin could leave alive, and were making their final struggle. Yilin's flying speed was slowed down, his face changed, and he kept kicking the palm holding his foot with his feet. In the process of pulling, Yilin's trouser legs were torn, and the palms of the undead were torn alive. Pieces of bloody flesh were scraped off Yilin's legs. I don't owe you any more. Amidst the roars of the undead, a flexible fat man grunted along the tower of flesh and blood and rolled to the top. With 3 punches and 2 kicks, he pulled away the dozens of undead that were tearing Yilin's flesh and blood away. With only half of his body left, Li Chang'e struggled to climb up. He originally wanted to climb out, but when he saw Li Erpang who suddenly rebellious, Li Chang'e remembered the strange memory he accidentally read during a certain mission. When Li Chang'e raised his head and looked at the broken when half of the mask was removed, he was shocked at first, and then on his bloody face, only relief after exhaustion remained. It turns out to be you. Yilin lowered his head and looked at Li Chang'e's bloody half-face. Li Chang'e bit with his teeth and used his last hand to tear off the other undead. He bit the flesh of other undead in his mouth and said vaguely, "Remember to be nice to the other me, boss." Even though Li Chang'e was miserable and ferocious at the moment, Yilin had never thought this face was so handsome. Yilin nodded. Rest in peace. Goodbye. Li Chang'e and Li Erpang, who resisted, were dragged into the rotten flesh by countless hands. In the blink of an eye, they were all eaten up, and their eyes gradually lost the last luster and lost focus. After breaking free from the clutches of the undead, Yilin flew into the portal with her legs covered in blood and bones. Inside the portal is a bizarre tunnel. Yilin closed her eyes. So tired. So tired. So tired. He couldn't tell whether he was rising or falling. Yulin was spinning in the long transmission channel, like a kite with its string broken. The strong sense of weightlessness brought about the discomfort of dizziness and vomiting. At the end, Yulin could only try hard to reach into the infinitely deep distance, trying to grab something. Snapped. A white and tender palm suddenly stretched out from the end of the stream of light and tightly held Yulin's weak right hand. Hey hey hey. At this time, a cold laugh came from behind. Zhao Yulong was covered in blood, and his hands and feet were bitten to only half of his body in the final fight between the undead. Like a demon from hell, he opened his mouth and bit Yulin's flesh. Click. Zhao Yulong bit one of Yulin's hands and penetrated deep into the bone. He raised his head, and his white teeth, bright red blood, and clear red and white mouth made his face look particularly terrifying and gloomy. Zhao Yulong's teeth were like two saw teeth, grinding Yulin's bones hard. I want to go to a world where there are little dreams alive. Yulin lowered his head and looked at the ferocious Zhao Yulong, who had completely lost himself. His hand was chewed into the bone by Zhao Yulong. But at this moment, Yulin looked at Zhao Yulong with no resentment or anger, only pity. He felt that Zhao Yulong was very pitiful. In the timeline of Yulin's second life, he fell in love with someone he shouldn't have loved. That person betrayed Zhao Yulong and led the plan to annihilate Mo Ren enemies. Yu Meng did not respond to Zhao Yulong until the end. Some responded. In the end, due to various entanglements, Yulin personally killed Yu Meng during a trial. At this moment, Zhao Yulong, even if he died and became an undead, he never lived for himself, even once. Sorry, I can't take you away. Yulin didn't say the next words, he was very tired. But I will live on with everything you have. No matter what your expectations are. Or anger. Or hatred. Or sad. I will accept them one by one, and then take them with me and leave here. Until, return it to them, to the gods above. The small dagger popped out of the undead card slot. Yulin used her last telekinesis to control the dagger and cut off Zhao Yulong's biting left arm at the elbow. Zhao Yulong's blood-stained face was completely frozen in ferocious expression, and there was only boundless despair in his eyes. Rays of light passed through Yulin's shattered body. A strange warmth flowed throughout my body. Yulin felt that this body was gradually condensing from illusion into reality. No, his body bleeds and ache, it's always real. But for some reason, as the surrounding light changed, he gradually had such a strange illusion. When I opened my eyes again, Yulin stood in the void. It's a dark night. The dark night was dotted with stars, and the sky was dotted with stars in the deep, dark sky. A woman in a long skirt, with thick tubes extending out from behind her, extending in all directions. She is like a goddess sitting cross-legged in the center of the huge network, with a divine glow on her face and a solemn expression. The tubes are blue, and each one is like a translucent water pipe, with a beautiful blue fluorescent liquid flowing inside. At the end of the tube, there are circles of twisted ripples, as if they have entered another space. Each tube has a different length. Some are right next to the woman, while others extend to the end of the night sky, out of reach. The blue liquid in the tube flows in different directions. Some flow into the girl's body from a distance, while others flow from the girl's body to an unknown plane. You are 11. Yulin fell downwards, panting. He was extremely tired. Xiao 11 smiled slightly and stretched out her hand from 1,000 meters away. Yulin was held up by an invisible and soft force. As soon as his eyes turned, he appeared in front of Xiao 11. Whether it was mental exhaustion or physical exhaustion, at the moment everything ended, it was difficult for him to maintain a standing posture, and he fell down on the edge of Xiao 11's skirt without any dignity. The Xiao 11 in front of her looked like she was about 20 years old, but there was no girlish youthfulness between her brows. Yulin was willing to call Xiao 11's posture young woman 11. Diddy. Lines of tiny data streams flashed through Xiao 11's eyes. She looked at the exhausted Yulin and stood up slowly. Yulin looked at Xiao 11's figure in surprise. The skirt was actually transparent, like a piece of holy light that was so sacred that it could not be offended. Yulin quickly lowered his head. Congratulations, you have arrived at the true one and only. With indescribable fatigue on her face, Xiao 11 smiled and stretched out her palm towards Yulin. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1093. Yulin's lower limbs were bloody and bleeding. Xiao 11. Yulin had thought countless times about what questions to ask when she met Xiao 11 again, but when the moment actually came, Yulin felt that her mind was blank and she didn't know where to start. There are so many puzzles she left behind, and she deserves the title of the ancestor of the Riddler. Can you heal me first? Yulin took a deep breath and pointed at the wounds on her body. Xiao 11 shook her head. You can't use backup now. Yulin's expression changed and he tore off his upper body clothes. Only then did he realize that even if he left hell alive, he had not returned to his identity as an apostle. The brand of the apostle's unique ID was not reprinted on his body. On the body. Helpless, Yulin could only let the wound bleed. Fortunately, he has a special bloodline and has strong self-healing ability. Forget it, Yulin felt that this posture was a bit embarrassing in front of Xiao 11, so he activated the free technique. Countercurrent. The last of his psychic energy was squeezed out like toothpaste, and as the wounds on his body were quickly repaired, he really didn't have a drop left. All the tubes were withdrawn from Xioxes back into her body. The tubes were connected to unknown places. After being put into Xioxes' body, Xioxes stood in front of Yulin, as ordinary as a beautiful woman. The young woman next door is approachable. It was difficult to connect the Xiao 11 in front of him with such a tall and powerful being as God. One person and one God, sitting high in the sky. Below is the Neon City. There seemed to be a transparent floor under Yulin's butt. He sat very comfortably. He thought for a moment and started to raise his hands. Excuse me. Xiao 11 already knew that Yulin was full of questions, so she nodded and said with a smile. Where is this? This is a very good question. Xiao 11 raised an index finger. Countless artifacts have been born in this world, and all artifacts, without exception, eventually ushered in desperate destruction. Xiao 11 said as he spoke, he sighed, and the place where these countless time artifacts are born is the only reality. It's as if this was said but not said. Yulin glared at Xiao 11. Xiao 11 tilted her head. She seemed to be thinking about a way to allow Yulin to fully understand the current situation. After all, the intelligence of humans and gods cannot be generalized. After a while, Xiao 11 waved her hand, and Yulin's eyes were dazzled. When he came to his senses again, he came to the center of the city from high altitude, and he was transferred here by Xiao 11. The beams of light reflected by the 7-color neon lights are like frozen frames, interspersed in the city night sky, and the mediocre pedestrians are frozen on the crowded road. Whether it is vehicles, pedestrians, or lights, the world in front of Yulin seems to be frozen in time. Still and silent, the expressions on everyone's faces seem to be frozen in the photo, and will not change with the passage of time. Time here is frozen. No. It's not just the city that's frozen. From just now, Yulin heard no sound at all. Even in a quiet place, there will be sounds. Breathing, heartbeat, wind, air movement, noise, traffic, conversation. But here, in this world, there is none. There was no sound or movement. Even Xiao 11 and Yulin didn't leave even a trace of footsteps as they shuttled through the still flow of people. It was eerily quiet and terrifyingly silent. Time stopped. Yulin asked in surprise. Xiao 11 shook her head. No, it's here time, and I haven't started walking yet. Hear the words. Yulin suddenly woke up and looked at Xiao 11 in shock. Xiao 11 seemed to understand what Yulin understood. She waved her hand again and took Yulin to the top floor of a building, overlooking from a high place. Really? No. Familiar scenery, not here. Here, there are no 4 towers yet. What time is it now? Yulin changed the question. In a way you can understand, now is 22:59 on November 11, 2111. Xiao 11 is like a changeable clock puppet, accurately reporting the time. Am I back in the past? So, what is the past in your opinion? Yulin was silent, he himself didn't know how to explain what past was. You always think that everything you have experienced is the future, and when you return to this moment, it is the past. Xiao 11 gently comforted Yulin's head, like a mother comforting her child, but, you are wrong. Everything has not started yet. Everything you have experienced is just an artifact. I can't understand. Yulin gritted his teeth. According to what you said, everything I have experienced has been in vain? Their deaths, everyone's suffering, everyone's pain, are all phantoms. Ha 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 ha. You worked so hard to get here, and now you're telling me that it's all a lie. Being held gently by Xiao 11, Yulin let out a low growl. The sound was like a big child who had lost his beloved toy. His voice made no echo. In this static world, even echo has become a luxury. Another crazy one. Yulin couldn't accept it. He couldn't understand either. Everything he has experienced, in Xiao 11's words, is just a possibility of the future. He has gone through all kinds of sufferings. Xiaorugjiu died, everyone died, and when he was struggling to crawl out of hell, Zioxi told him that everything was in vain? Ha ha ha. Smiling and laughing, Yuren burst into tears. At the end of the smile, there is only boundless despair. Xiao 11 hugged Yulin. In this still and dead real world, one person and one god cuddled up to each other. Xiao 11 patted Yulin's back gently. Yulin was like her child, in pain and helplessness. When helping others, he needs a mother-like figure. You're wrong, 10. Xiao 11 smiled slightly. Everything you have experienced will not become an phantom, nor will it be in vain. Yulin looked up blankly and looked into Xiao 11's eyes full of energy. There is only one way to change the hopeless future. Your presence here is the only way. Half a century ago, you participated in that war as a heroic spirit. It was you who told me this. The thing is, it's because of you that I choose you. After a moment of silence, Xiao 11 let go of Yulin, with a hint of helplessness and exhaustion on her face. Under Yulin's astonished eyes, she told the truth. This is the only reality for you, and for me in general. It is the core area of 11 Paradise. Everything that happens here will be faithfully recorded in 11 Paradise. Once this place is taken away, everything will be over, my will go back, and you will die. I have spent countless years of time, exhausted the source, and built the 11 Paradise, but it will also be divided up by the greedy them. Yuren calmed down. At this time, Xiao 11's expression changed slightly. She looked up into the sky, and then sighed. Sure enough, here was discovered. Yulin took a deep breath. Sure enough, human being's ability to accept is very strong. At least, after experiencing many things, Yulin's psychological endurance was beyond his imagination. His emotional fluctuations caused by reality quickly calmed down. He looked at Xiao 11, what can I do? Have you recovered? Xiao 11's eyes were as gentle as water. Yulin had never seen such a down-to-earth god. At this moment, Xiao 11's eyebrows looked a bit like a flower girl, like a kind mother. Yes, after thinking about it, Yulin felt relieved. Xiao 11 has lived for a long time. Strictly speaking, everyone in the world is her child. Before we begin, Xiao 11 stretched out her white palms. Between her palms, there lay a diamond-shaped crystal that seemed to be made of ice. The crystal was perfect. In Xiao 11's palm, there was a slight chill. 11 smiled and said, "This was given to me in the clone left by the Beta-1010 artifact. I want to return it to you." With trembling hands, Yilin carefully held the ice crystal. For some reason, the moment his palm came into contact with the ice crystal, waves of inexplicable pain surged out of his chest. He forgot to ask questions, and he also forgot to have doubts. At this moment, Yilin could only feel the coldness in his palms, and his heart ached inexplicably. "I'll send you the data." Xiao 11 stretched out her index finger and tapped Yilin's forehead lightly. Blue light was like sparks, bursting out on Yilin's forehead, and the crystallized data was transmitted to Yilin's memory in this form. Sizzling. Data is being transferred. Please wait with patience. Transmission completed. Xiaoshue's heart. Level legend. Durable, never wear out. Effect: when the holder is about to suffer fatal damage, an ice cliff will be automatically generated for the holder to resist a fatal damage. Cooling time, 240 hours. Explanation: an infatuated woman did not hesitate to sacrifice her own life. In order to protect her beloved senior brother, she used the absolute ice that could freeze the principles of all things, and transformed into a woman who flew snow for 30,000 miles. In the end, only this was left. An everlasting Xiaoshue's heart seems to be saying, even if there is a cliff of time and space, no matter where she is, she will protect you at all costs, senior brother. Don't forget, Xiaorugjiu,